Two, one, we're live. Hello, I'm attorney Vince Davis, and this is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win. Tonight I'm joined by my two very special guest hosts, Miss G, Georgette Truin, and Miss Cassandra Woodard. Miss Woodard, how are you this evening?
I'm good.
Good. And Miss G? Same as usual, huh?
I'm great, Davis. Just
Really?
great. Just looking at your face is just lights my day
Okay.
and night.
Okay, genuflect when you say that. Now, Thomas Lopez says, hi, Mr. Davis. Would you please be willing to address in a future show, however briefly, the payments received by people who adopt from the county and CPS corruption regarding that? Sure, Thomas, I'll be able to do that. And then Thomas says, I do believe in one of your shows a few years ago. Wow, Thomas, you've been watching that long? Mr. Davis, you mentioned very briefly that somehow some adoptive parents think they're going to get government payments for a long time, but actually only, what does it say? Receive them for 2 years. Yeah, that's kind of a trip, Thomas. I'll talk about that. Anyway, so Miss G, Miss Woodard, we had a guest scheduled for tonight, a CPS victim from the state of Nebraska. But apparently prior to the show, Grace, our producer, was working with her, and she had some technical difficulties with her internet and her camera and, the whole thing. So we'll have to reschedule her. I was kind of excited having someone from Nebraska. There's a few states that we don't get a lot of calls from, and Nebraska is one of them. I very rarely talk to somebody from Nebraska. I always get California, New York, Florida, Texas, Louisiana, Minnesota. Nebraska, not so much. Okay, so I was thinking that tonight, Miss Woodard and Miss Truin, you guys could ask me questions to start off, and then we'll take questions from the audience. So audience members, if you're watching, go ahead and post your question that you've been waiting to ask me. Just post it there in the comments. I'll see them on my control screen, and I'll read them. I'll put them up on the viewer for everyone to see, like that, and then I'll answer, and we'll just move on. Okay. All right. Miss Woodard, did you have a question that you wanted to ask me, or you've been thinking about?
Go ahead, girl. Ask him.
Must be an inside joke, huh?
Ask him, baby.
He knows that I was waiting for you to ask her, and then I was going to follow up. Like, he already knows that I didn't have a question.
He asked you first. He asked you first.
Well, wait a minute. Do you guys want me to ask Miss G first? Miss G, did you have a question for me?
Yes, I do. I always have questions for you, Davis.
Okay, go ahead. Shoot. Anytime. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, you can't even let me freaking look at the question? Give me a minute? Not even a minute.
It's kind of like live TV, right?
It's kind of like you want me to ask you the questions or not?
Go ahead.
So the question is this: can a mother or a parent give the foster parents money to help them with the children? Because they asked. The foster parent asked.
They can. In my humble opinion, they shouldn't. But that's what a parent does with his or her money. That's up to them. Now, here's the important part. They don't have to. The county or the state gives the foster parent a sizable chunk of money every month to take care of the child. Now, if they're asking for, more money, I don't know. I don't know why they're doing that. Do they need it? Presumably not, but maybe they do. I've heard in the past over the years, people alleging that foster parents ask for money to make the kid available for more visitation or more telephone contact, and that, the money wasn't really needed. It was kind of like, a bribe or a payoff or something. But, it just depends on the situation. But the answer to your question, just the straight answer is, yeah, a parent can give anything to the foster parent.
But isn't that against rules of social workers? I mean, isn't that against the rules? It doesn't. I guess it doesn't add up. I mean, the county already helps the parent, the foster parents. What I'm saying, wouldn't that
Hey,
be kind of violation of?
no, no. A
Hmm,
gift, you can gift money to anyone.
not with somebody who has your children, who actually holds them hostage from you. You don't do that. You don't request money from the
So
parents. What I'm saying.
you asked me a very straightforward question. I gave you a straightforward answer. Now, you may not like it.
I don't like it.
Okay, well, do you have another question? That was just a joke, GT. I'm sorry.
You're so just.
But I
Ooh,
wanted to get a reaction out of Miss Woodard.
Miss Woodard always gets a reaction out of us. All she does is laugh. Poor child.
Because you guys are so funny.
I missed you, Cassandra. I'm so glad you're back.
The dynamic is just perfect between you guys.
We could do like a comedy show.
I know, right? I swear. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. You're going to be the head of the group, Mr. Davis, because you're so funny. Kills me. Second question, Attorney Davis. When the foster parents gain adoption, when the foster parents file for an adoption and tells the parents they will never see their children again in a video chat with the parents and the children, then the parent reports that to the social worker. Then the parent tells the social worker that it came on their camera, their home camera, as proof, as evidence, and shows it to their court-appointed attorney. And and the social workers and the court-appointed attorney tells them it's irrelevant. What is your thought on that? Is it really irrelevant, or is it, if you were handling the case for them, what would you do?
It depends. And it mainly depends on the stage of the case where that's said. If it was said during the process of reunification services, you could possibly make a big deal out of that and get the foster children moved from that foster parent. If it's prior to the rights being terminated, your 388 has failed, it's just a little slap on the hand, right? And I could see a good attorney twisting it, saying, well, the foster parent was just being honest with the parent and trying to get him or her prepared for the inevitable.
In front of the children? In front of the children, where the children were hysterical, crying, "Don't leave me, mommy," all this? Really? But this happened during the disposition hearing, by the way.
Oh, then that's totally out of line, because you're in family reunification mode.
Right.
And the foster parent at this point in time is supposed to be working with the social worker to help you reunify with your children. And if you have a person saying you'll never see your kids again, that ain't working with you to get your children back.
Right. I'm sorry, I threw up a little bit when you said that the social workers and the foster parents should help each other to,
No, that's
reunify.
not what that's not what I said. Are you listening to me?
Half
I
of the time I
said,
don't.
let me repeat it, because you're missing this. You're missing this very subtle points here, Miss G. I said the foster parent and the social worker are supposed to be working to help the parent reunify.
That's what I said. Working together to help the
I
parent
didn't say
reunify.
anything about together.
What? Okay, so that's the only point that really bothered you, really?
Well, it's significant in a legal sense, right?
Yes, I guess to you, yes. To me, it's
Okay,
not.
you're right.
Okay. Another question. My court-appointed attorney told me today that I have more chances to get the child back if I sign a consent that I accept all allegations against me. I asked the court appointed attorney to write that down, what he said to me, because I don't believe him. Would you please ask Mr. Davis if I should do what he's telling me to do, is to sign that I'm guilty for something I didn't do, especially if it was a domestic violence and I did protect my children by calling the police to begin with a ex-husband who had a restraining order against him and he wasn't supposed to come to my home. However, they are making it look like I failed to protect my children, even though he came to my home, violated the restraining order. What would Mr. Davis, um, how would Mr. Davis handle something like that if I were to hire him?
Well, I would like to condemn that advice. However, there is a caveat. I don't know everything about the case, so I'm just going to talk about it generally speaking. Generally speaking, if someone tells you to admit to something that you didn't do, they are asking you to lie to the judge. All right. And
Oh,
I don't I don't think that's ever a good idea. All right. Now, I said ever, but I don't think that's a good idea in most situations. There may be extenuating circumstances in your case where, an attorney could in good faith tell you to do something like that.
mm-hmm,
Okay.
mm-hmm,
But in my opinion, they're few and far between. Okay. Many decades ago, I was a court appointed attorney. And, court appointed attorneys, everyone in that courtroom has their own agenda.
mm-hmm.
All right. So you'd have to ask your court appointed attorney what his or her agenda is. Is it really your best interest, or do they want to get out of doing a trial? I don't know. But those are the two opposite ends of the pole. You just never know. So generally, I would say don't do it, but there may be exceptions.
Okay.
Um, I'm sitting right here at this table right now, and if I have to get up and go to the airport, all right, to LAX, about 45 minutes away, there are many ways I can get there. I can get there walking. I can get there in a car, on a bicycle, on a motorcycle, in a taxi, in an Uber. There are many ways to get there. And then, if it's a car, there are many different types of cars, right? There's your Nissan, and then there's your, Bentley, and everything in between. So attorneys are kind of the same way. Everyone has their own idea how they're going to get to the airport and in what vehicle or mode. So you got to keep that in mind when you're talking to your attorney. And, hopefully your attorney has your best interests at heart.
Well, we both know that they don't.
Well, I would never make a blanket statement like that.
The good ones got hit by a bus a long time ago.
Okay.
So I wanted to correct something real quick from last night's show. I did mention to you guys that Judge Judy was a CPS attorney in the 70s, around the mid 70s or so, but she wasn't. It was when Cassandra, the 80s or 90s.
She became a judge for family
CPS.
family courts and CPS courts in 1982.
1982. So I made a mistake. It wasn't the 70s. It was 1982.
Do you know where?
In New York.
New York.
Oh, New York. Okay.
Mhm.
So I was going to say, if that's true, I would have appeared in front of her, and I don't recognize her. I mean, I
No.
don't.
No.
I mean, I recognize her from TV. I don't recognize her, from court. So she was
Yeah.
in New York. Okay.
Yeah, she was in New York. Yeah, and she actually had a lot of interviews with CNN. Was it CNN, Cassandra, or
60 minutes.
60 Minutes? Yeah.
About CPS?
Mhm.
Oh, interesting.
Yep, she's really good.
Do you have those links, Cassandra?
Mhm. Oh,
Yeah,
I do.
yeah, I have them too. I found them on TikTok, actually.
Oh, really? Was
Mhm.
is she pro CPS or anti DCF or neutral?
She's
She was
against them.
she was against them most of the time, but she was mostly neutral. But she really told CPS workers and the caseworkers to, like, if you're gonna come in here with some bullshit, get the fuck out.
Yep, literally. Would tell them to get the fuck out. Get the fuck out. My favorite word. Yeah, a judge said it. A judge.
Yeah,
Just from watching her on TV,
Mhm.
I could see her saying that.
Yeah, she's
yeah.
passionate.
Like, if you're gonna
She's
come
like,
in here with some nonsense, get out of here. Because
Yeah.
like, I want to hear like what's actually going on, not what you're telling me is going on. Like, I want to know what's actually going on from both sides.
She
And if you're
wants
gonna come in
evidence.
here, I know when you're lying. I've done this for years. Get out of my face if you're gonna do that.
Yeah, but also she said, "I want evidence, evidence, evidence. Don't
you know,
Yeah.
just
when
say
I
it."
first when I first joined or started doing this type of work, and I was a court appointed attorney decades ago, I appeared in front of a guy who was a judicial officer who was kind of the same way. He wasn't that abrasive as maybe a Judge Judy, but he was the same way. He never said this, but it was like, workers knew not to go in there trying to bullshit him because, he'd make his ruling accordingly.
Mhm. Yep, that's the kind of judge I would be. I'd be like, "Get the fuck out of my courtroom."
And she was a judge for just like not just for CPS cases, but family matters and juvenile matters,
And
like
doing that,
juvenile
yeah,
and juvenile dependency. It
Okay.
was just
Okay.
yeah, she was good. I like
That's
her.
very interesting. I don't know if you've ever read any stories about her. The business she has now is that show, right?
Right, Judge Judy.
And the I read an article. I think that show a few years ago was bringing in $65 million a year,
Hmm.
and it was interesting how they find the people. These are like real cases from like small claims courts and stuff like
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
and they come on and let Judge Judy be the arbiter of, and as part of a TV show.
And they wanted her. They chose her because she's very blunt. She'll speak the truth no matter what,
Right.
and that's what they wanted. They wanted people to see that honesty is important in court. It's very
Right.
important. Yeah,
I think she owns the show now.
now she
Um,
does.
yeah, but I could see that when they first started off. I mean, you know, um, a judge that brat, with that much, chutzpah is something that might be refreshing to a lot of people.
Yes, and that's the kind of judges we need in our court system, our courtrooms, because a lot of the judges we have, they're so cowards. They're just cowardice. They sit there and the social worker will be like, "That's my recommendation, Your Honor," and they'll be like, "Okay." There is no backbone to them. They're very weak-minded individuals, very stupid in my book, in my opinion. I know you will disagree because I'm sure there's judges you care about, but I think most of them are stupid.
Here's a question from Cindy, an ICPC, Interstate Compact for the Placement of Children. Is there a time limit in which this needs completed? Took state 10 months after placement to approve. First in-person in-home visit took place 7 months after placement of the children. Cindy, I'm in California, and the ICPC is a law that is in every state in the country, and the time limits are really, really soft. However, here's a key practice pointer for anybody that has an ICPC issue. When you ask for an ICPC, ask for an emergency ICPC. It
Hmm.
must be completed by law within 30 days. So
Hmm.
none of this 5 month, 10-month kind of BS. You know, I I was involved in a case several years ago, and it was in Riverside County. And the out of state relative came to the first hearing, the first detention hearing, and said, I want the kid.
Hmm.
Well, it took maybe a year or more, if I remember correctly, for the ICPC to get approved. And as a matter of fact, there was some evidence that it was approved after many, many months, and it sat on the social worker's desk and not, given to the court or anything. And by the time it got around, the child had been in the foster home for so long that the judge ruled that the relative who showed up on the first day couldn't get the child because the foster parent the child had developed a physical, psychological, and emotional bond with the relative, with the foster parent. Now, this is interesting. A lot of relatives that I talk to believe that the social workers will do the right thing within a timely manner. That's not true. And I get a lot of calls, and I know, Miss G, you probably do too. Get a lot of calls of people just outraged, at a situation like this. Unfortunately, over the years, over the 3 decades I've been doing these cases, there are very subtle ways that a social worker can stroke a case and get what they want. Very subtle. And the story I just told you about an ICPC taking so long and then sitting on the desk is one of those ways. During the testimony, the judge I don't know if it was the first or second hearing, ordered the ICPC in this case. And during the testimony, it came out that it took months for the social worker to prepare the paperwork to begin the ICPC. So by doing that, they're giving the subtle advantage to the foster parent.
Wow.
You see how that works?
Yes.
At every stage, I'm going to delay the ICPC because I want the kid to stay in my county, Riverside County, and not go with the relative, out in the middle of Kansas someplace.
Isn't that because of funding, though?
It could be.
It could be?
Yeah, because the funding does follow the kid, but more importantly, sometimes there's relationships between social workers and foster parents. And it's been alleged that sometimes social workers favor foster parents or the kids staying in foster parents because social workers want to reward foster parents for being there to take placement of abused children. One of the things when social workers take children, there's a great responsibility they have to place children in the appropriate foster care or relative system. So you need a bunch of foster parents who are willing just to take kids whenever, kids are detained. So it's a subtle way of, it's allegedly a subtle way of, scratching the back of foster parents.
I don't think so. I doubt that very much.
Why?
Because they make money out of this shit. They get money. They can get the federal funding unless these kids are placed in foster home. That's in the freaking.
Let me give you an example. I'm going to tell you an example where the federal money doesn't mean anything. Okay, I'm a social worker. You're a foster parent. You're married and you're young and you can't have children. You'll do anything to get that pretty baby placed with you so that you can have a child. I've heard it alleged that you might even pay me $25,000 under the table. That had nothing to do with federal funding. You basically, I'm selling you a kid. And you basically are buying this kid because your life's dream and your whole being of being a mother, and you can't have kids.
But when they adopt, they get more money from the federal government.
But that wasn't the impetus for this whole scheme. That's why when you say it's always the money, it's not. A lot of the time.
What did you eat today, Davis?
A lot of the times it is, but it's not. And now the situation I just gave you, the money wouldn't even matter. What really matters is you paid me $25,000 or more for me to make sure you got that kid and you keep that kid.
I get that. I get that part.
That
I
has,
trust
that
you
has
100%
nothing
on that. But the
that has
social
nothing to
worker has
do
motives.
that
There's
has nothing to
motives.
do that has nothing to do with federal funding.
Yes, it
If there
does.
was no federal funding, I
It,
would be bribed for the 25,000 or more.
We're not
and
talking
you get
about
your
that.
kid.
No, we're not talking about you. We're talking about the social worker's intention to keep children in foster home and keep them there and not reunify them with their mother. What are you talking about? This is about money. This is about the funding.
either
I
way, it's about money, but it's not always about federal money. Sometimes it's about money that they get under the table for keeping these kids away from their parents.
I get that, but they get both. They
allegedly.
put that money under the
Allegedly.
table and they get the federal funding as well. Okay? They do. They
Allegedly.
get both under the table. They get both under the table.
Allegedly.
Or they could get both. It could be both. It could be both. It could be one or the other. It could be either one.
Either way, that's horrible what they're doing. Horrible.
Exactly.
Because
Either
the
way, it's horrible.
Right. So because other foster parents become a foster parent to adopt. Okay. So there's an adoptive home and non-adoptive home, just placement home. So these two homes are important to the social workers. The adoptive home, they usually put infants in there. Certain type of age they put in those homes. So those people that become foster parents to adopt, they see that as the cheapest way for adoption because they don't have to put a dime in there.
Hey, everybody that's watching, I want you to look at the bottom left of your screen, freecpsreport.com. That's a special report that I typed up for parents. Go there and get a copy of that report. Okay, Miss G, next question if you have one.
See how he dismisses me like I'm...
There is a time limit on the show, Miss G.
Next question, Davis. Next question.
Okay, go ahead.
Wow.
They came. Wow is right. They came. Social workers came and removed my children, and they would not tell me the allegation. However, there was no investigation conducted in my case at all. Now I have my 6 months hearing next month, 6-month review hearing next month, and I still don't know what the allegations are. The social worker and my court appointed attorney are not telling me a thing. I've never gone to one court hearing, not once. And I was watching your show with Attorney Davis, Ms. G, and you guys mentioned that there has to be a hearing within the first 72 hours of removal. But my hearing, I've never had 1, 2, 3, or 4 hearings. I don't understand why. But when I talked to my court appointed attorney, he said that we don't have to include you in the hearings. Is that false or true? And can they just remove children from my care without telling me why? I'm confused. Wow.
You're muted.
Ha! You see what God did right now? Do you see that? Do you see that?
Okay. Did you talk to this lady, Georgette? You did? Is that yes?
Yes.
Okay. Is she from California?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if half of what you say is true,
San Bernardino.
if half of
wow.
what you say is true,
Mhm.
there's a big
That's not what I
problem
said.
here. It's a big problem. And this is not the first time people have told me similar allegations.
Mhm.
Okay. So what I would suggest is that she think about getting a new attorney. If what she's telling you is true, sometimes, Miss G, people call you up and tell you things that aren't true.
I know that, Davis. I
But
get it.
but if what she's telling you is true, she needs to get another attorney immediately because she doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know. She's never had a hearing. Blah blah blah. She needs to get to do something, or she's going to lose her child. Period. End of story.
I gave her your book to look at the 6-month review hearing and what to expect and share it with her attorney. She told me that her attorney replied to her text message and told her, I am not going to follow his what? his something. I can't remember what she said, but something like he was being sarcastic. And
But the funny thing is, my book is not designed to. It's more of an explanation of the issues. There's not like any strategy for every case, but it's more to inform you what's going on
and what to do. No, I actually say that.
And maybe that's not part of his strategy. I don't know.
No, it's not part of his strategy. So she wanted him to work with you, like, to be, work together. And I know another client of ours wanted the same thing, but
yeah, they're not going to do that.
No, he didn't want to, he says.
Yeah. And they don't have to.
And I told her that. She was trying to force him. And I said, you can't force him. You really can't. And she said, can we get a court order to make him? I said, why would you? I don't get it. You can't make anyone work with anyone.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, she wanted to know if that is true, what she was told. I have another question, if that's okay.
Absolutely. What?
Absolutely. We're waiting. No.
Oh, no, you didn't. Oh, no, you didn't. Okay. So I'm in the state of Texas. I have 5 children. My ex-husband got into trouble with the law. And I don't live with him. We don't live together. He lives in a different county in Texas. However, DCFS got involved because the police asked him if he has children. And he told them, yes, I have 5 with my ex-wife. They asked him, where does your wife live? And he gives them the address. The social worker knocked on my door, removed all 5 children with 5 sheriff officers with her. And I have no idea why until after removal. Then I found out 3 months later, that's because my ex-husband was arrested. What do I have to do with my ex-husband behavior? That's why he's my ex, because I don't want to be with him. So why do I have to suffer the consequences of his actions? Is that something that they have the right to do? Please ask Mr. Davis. I'm afraid to ask him on the show.
Okay. First of all, I'm licensed in California, not Texas. So I'll tell you what I think about the case if it were here in California.
Right.
I would say in my opinion, they had no right to do that to the mother. I hope they went out and got a warrant to try to protect themselves from a lawsuit for civil rights violations. But under those facts and circumstances, if that's the whole story, right? That's a big if. How she could have possibly lost her children at a detainment and then not get them back at the jurisdictional and dispositional hearing.
Correct. She's
truly a non-offending parent. Right. Now, here's what happens though, Miss Cassandra. You hear that story, but after you get involved in, the facts, little by little, as they learn to trust you, they start telling you more and more. Right? So, someone that you thought was non-offending really isn't non-offending. That happened the other day. I was talking to someone, and I had in my mind determined that this person was a non-offending parent. Turns out he wasn't non-offending, but although he denies the allegations, there are allegations of abuse against him. Now, he told me he had evidence that will prove that he's innocent, and that's fine. I mean, that's his right to do it, to have that trial. But, sometimes people call you up and they don't really tell you the full story, mainly because they don't know you. Ms. G, when they call you, they don't know you.
No, but I do know them when they send me evidence. For example, like I know who you're talking about right now. We were on a call with him and his wife.
No, I wasn't talking about him. I was talking.
Oh, really? Because it sounds familiar. But yeah,
now that's an interesting statement that you just made. It sounds familiar because it happens a lot. Happens a lot. Now, I'm not saying he's guilty or not guilty. I'm just saying when you that first thing that you think of,
Wow.
is he non-offending? That may not be accurate. So you have to keep that in mind when you're talking to people and trying to put together their story. A lot of people, parents think about their case and it just consumes them, and they come up with ideas and strategies on their own that they want implemented. I recently told somebody, the strategy you've developed is really a bad strategy. But if that's what you want me to do, I'll do it. Right. So it's hard sometimes to try to explain to someone because, it's one of those things. I did a video on this. You think something is the law, and based upon that, you have ideas and strategies, and like you start off in a decision making tree. The only problem is you started off with the wrong premise. So everything that you're deciding on your case is wrong, and you should have gone this way instead of that way because the first premise that you thought of was incorrect. And sometimes that's the hardest because people, call you up and they tell you, okay, I figured out what we have to do. And they tell me, and then I get into the case and I tell them, well, that's not the best strategy. And then they get upset. There's someone I've been talking to for a while. He calls me up for information and free advice, and we chit chat. And he called me up the other day and said, "Hey, Mr. Davis, you know what you told me about the strategy, blah blah blah. It turns out you were right. We're 4 months into the case, or he's 4 months into the case. And it took him 4 months to realize and to go down in flames in court that I was right. And I think that's the hardest thing to do. So, Miss Cassandra, I saw Miss G's lips moving. I don't know if she was on mute or if she was talking on the phone or something.
Man, God got me back for that one because I made fun of you earlier.
God doesn't like ugly.
No, he doesn't, Davis. Remember those words, yeah? Okay. Just remember them tomorrow, okay? Preferably at 9 a.m., okay? Okay. So, anyways, sometimes it takes people years, not just months, to actually understand a strategy that you speak of, okay?
Right. So
I have
that's the best I can do is give people ideas and strategies. And I've said this before on the stream. Many years ago, I used to get upset with people
mhm.
because they didn't listen to what I was telling them.
I get upset with people now
I
when
know,
they don't listen.
but we shouldn't, because we have to love them where they are.
I love them. That's why I get mad.
Yeah, but they are going through their own cathartic process. Sometimes it's just wrong. And, they'll listen to that best friend instead of, that best friend who's unemployed instead of, Mr. Davis, who's a 35-year lawyer.
And that's what gets me. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
But that's all part of the human process.
Correct.
It's all
And that's
part of
why
the
I
human
get
process.
mad.
Right. Well,
And
love them. Jerry Spence, one of my mentors, says, love them more, hug them more.
oh God.
Hard to do.
I know, but I just want them to not I guess my goal is to help everyone to get their children back. That's my goal. Cassandra knows that. That's in my heart. That's my
Yeah,
heart.
but Miss G, how long have we known each other?
A long time.
How many years? Tell me.
100 years.
Okay. So for the first 99.5 of those years, I had you on my back, carrying you, trying to make you understand things about the law, things about strategy. It's just till recently that you even appreciate what I'm saying. And I think this is the funny thing about it. I think you finally give me credit because you've actually seen me in action within the past 12 months.
I have.
And you're like, oh, looks like he does know what he's doing.
Yeah, you do.
But for 99.5 years, I keep telling you every day, and you're like, oh, it's just going one ear out the other.
It
But
just
that's
didn't make
how
sense to me. It was like
I know.
totally ebonic.
But that's how our people are, our parents are. It doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense.
But I had faith in you even before I seen you in action. I always had faith in you. But when I saw you in action, it kind of made that faith even bigger, because I'm like, okay, I was right. This was great. It's amazing. But
But you know what you don't do now? What you used to do? You don't ask me to justify my strategies.
no, I don't.
You used to do that all the time.
Constantly.
And it's kind of funny because a lot of times I would think to myself, how am I going to explain the law of evidence to her?
You don't
How am I
have
going
to.
to how am I going to explain, the California rules of court to her? How am I going to explain the case law to her? It's just something, I don't have the time to do it. We don't have time for a 6-hour discussion on, the rules of evidence and how they apply in a juvenile dependency case. We just don't.
Well, you did before, but I just didn't really get
Yeah,
it.
you didn't.
I didn't get it
Yeah.
because
And,
I didn't
and
want
that's
to.
how our people are. I mean, they're probably going through the most terrible thing in life they could be going through. They
Yeah,
lost their kids. There's probably nothing worse. There's nothing worse.
I know that. I get it. I sympathize with them, but when they tell me my friend said or my
Yeah,
sister
but
said, and
you
I'm
do the
like,
same. You do the
what?
same thing. You did the exact same thing.
What I don't get is people, okay, like how you guys are saying people don't listen, they don't listen. Like what I don't get is that if I'm paying a lawyer money, okay, whatever that lawyer's strategy is,
Mhm,
I'm going to listen to it no matter what, because
mhm,
I know that I don't know. And
Right.
yes, it is a difficult time to go through when you lose your kids, but that's like when you hire a lawyer, a private attorney, that's
correct.
supposed to take all that pressure off of you.
Correct.
Right. But you know what? There are a lot of things.
Kids back.
There are a lot. Let me tell you something. There are a lot of things that affect the relationship between an attorney and a client.
Mhm,
Let me give you an example. I have some clients that if they don't hear from me every day, twice a day,
mhm,
they think I'm ignoring them. They
mhm,
think that I'm don't care about their case,
mhm,
right? So
mhm.
everybody's different. I mean, and even though I might be busy doing that or out sick or
Mhm.
whatever, they start to, their idea about me changes.
Right.
Now, nothing has changed, but their perception in their own mind. So
And that's true. That's a true
yeah,
story, by the way.
yeah.
And then they're like, "Well, he's my attorney. Why isn't?" I'm like, "You just spoke with him like yesterday. Like what the?" And
And so I can
I
understand
don't
where
get
they're coming from with that too, is because they're so used to being ignored by their other attorney, that their public defender, that they think that they have to have that contact with their private attorney like the other attorney didn't do. I can understand that.
no. That's no, no,
Yeah,
no,
that's
no, no, no,
I
no,
would
no,
say
no.
that way too.
No, I disagree because I just recently started handling all of his appointments now, and I talk to people via text, and I just like they would say I've never heard Mr. Davis has not returned my calls. In my text messages, I clearly said, I'm calling you right now to transfer the call to Attorney Davis. That was like the night before, right?
Here's the
But
funny thing.
I'm letting you guys know that this is ridiculous. Like, really, come on.
Here's the funny thing. GT will text me. Miss G will text me and
Yeah.
says, "Mr. Jones is upset because you
Hmm.
haven't talked to him."
Hmm.
And then I respond, Miss G, I've spent the last half hour texting with the guy. What do
Yeah.
you mean I won't
Yeah.
respond to him?
Yep.
You know,
Now I'm watching all of it, and I see now that's insane. I give you guys the benefit of the doubt, but Jesus,
right?
wow, that's insane.
Hey,
No, he does return people's calls. He does. All right. So bottom
yeah,
line, period.
we're coming to the end of the show this evening.
Mhm.
I want to thank everybody for watching, and thank you, Miss Woodard. It's a pleasure to have you back. Thank,
Yay!
thank you, Miss Truen, Miss G. It's always a pleasure having you co-host and your comic relief. And we're going to see everyone tomorrow night. On at 7 p.m. Hopefully, our guest is not going to be having technical difficulties, and we'll hear some stories and and maybe answers the guests. By the way, if you want to be a guest,
To share
contact
your story.
contact Miss G or contact Grace, GRACE at vincentwdavis.com, and she'll arrange for you to be a guest. Yes, Miss G.
If it's possible, if you can email me as well.
Okay.
And go ahead, Mr. Davis.
At GAT at vincentwdavis.com.
And also you can email Cassandra as well at, what is it, Cassandra? Okay, just email me. I'll find out her email later. I should have asked her first before I put her on the spot. But
the other thing people can do, bottom right hand corner of this screen. Bottom right hand corner is our telephone number. Just call the number, ask for me, or ask for Miss G. Okay, good night, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Pacific. Bye-bye.
Good night.